Okay, friends, today in our Bible study, looking at the Gospel of John, we are going to be in chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice if you're reading in one of these John books is that it's italicized and it has a little bit of an explanation at the beginning. If you're reading in a different Bible, likely there's some kind of note that lets you know that these 11 verses were not originally there. Here's the thing. We've talked about this at the beginning. In fact, John explicitly says this near the end of the book, but the author of John had to make decisions about what to and not to include. You can't put in one book everything that Jesus did. So this story wasn't in the original manuscript of John. But at some point, somebody said, you know what? That story about Jesus and the way that he navigated the questions that people asked him when that woman was caught in adultery, when Jesus did that really ought to be in there. So they added it. And it's added in a few different places. In fact, it's sometimes even added to some of the other Gospels. But where it is most of the time is it's right here where we find it in these Bibles, in John 8, 1 through 11. Somebody said that encounter that Jesus had ought to be there. And I think where it's added is a brilliant place to add it. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that because I preached on it this past Sunday, but this story comes right before Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. And I think that it's placed there because this is an example of what it looks like for Jesus to bring light into a situation. I'm going to give you kind of the bottom line of the sermon, and I'm going to point out something that I didn't talk about in the sermon. I think what's happening here is that when Jesus gets into the situation, I'm assuming you've read the story at this point, so if you haven't read it yet, you should read it. When Jesus steps into the situation, he brings the lights up. And what that means is that what has been hidden in the darkness is revealed. Everybody knows that these religious leaders, the ones who are holding the stones, everybody knows that they are loved. They're adored by the community. Everybody knows that they are beloved of God. But when the lights come up, what you also see is that these men with the stones in their hands, they're also broken. Everybody knows that this woman in this story is broken. When the lights come up, when Jesus steps in the situation, you find out that not only is she broken, but she's also beloved. And I think in a lot of ways what's happening here is that the playing field is being leveled. And we're seeing when the lights come up, all of us are those two things. We're all broken. And we're all beloved. Again, more of that, you can look at the sermon from this past Sunday. How is it that Jesus is calling these men out? How is it that their brokenness is being put on display? 2 times Jesus bends down and draws in the dirt. There's a lot of speculation about what's happening there. Possibly what's happening is that he's just drawing. And the reason that he's not looking is because this woman has been brought out of the very act of adultery, meaning that likely she is in a state where she's embarrassed and filled with shame, and Jesus is respecting her by not looking at her. That's possible. It's possible that what he's scribbling in the dirt is the names of the men who are standing there accusing her before he says to them, hey, if you don't have sin, you cast the first stone. It's possible that he's writing down the list of their sins. It's also possible that he's hearkening back to some passages in the Old Testament that talk about the names of those who are sinful being written in the dust, in the dirt. So again, that would be why he's writing their names. All of those are a possibility. It's also possible that he is just being quiet and allowing the reality of the moment to sink in, trusting that when he looks at them and says, you who without sin, you cast the first stone, in that silence preceding that, and then after he says that he just knows that these men will understand. Perhaps it's that. We don't know exactly what he wrote in the dirt, but we know that moment, whatever he's doing, causes those men, the stones in their hands, for the lights to come up in their lives, and for them to see, okay, I've got some brokenness in my life also. And then the conversation afterwards causes the lights to come up and that woman to see, at least this man, he respects me. I'm broken. He respects me. And ultimately what it points to is the love that the Father has. That she's broken, but she's beloved. So let me just ask you for you. Is there an area in your life where the lights need to come up? To see I'm broken, to see I'm beloved. Is there an area in this world that maybe you are being asked to shine your light into? For the light of God to reflect off of you and to bring light into a dark area? Is there an area of the world or in you that is dark? And what would it look like for you to invite God into that? For the lights to come up. There are lots of things that you might see, but what you will definitely see is that you and the people around you are two things: broken and beloved. As we get ready for Christmas, what does it mean for us to reflect on those two things? The world is broken, but God still loves it. Do you know today that you are broken and beloved? I'm going to be with you again tomorrow, and we're going to wrap up this week's reading. God bless you, friends.